The Shark Deck.
Busy one again today. Hi, I'm Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news. A bunch of the late night guys tweeted. I saw Colbert did it and then Kimmel did it. I'm assuming Fallon did it as well. But from Colbert, this just in, I'm headed to Vegas with Jimmy Fallon and Jimmy Kimmel for Strike Force 3 live. Catch us one night only, Saturday, September 23rd. All proceeds from our live show will go directly to out-of-work staff from our respective shows. See you there. The Hollywood Reporter had a press release in which Seth Meyers and John Oliver addressed their absence. Oliver said, "I'm not allowed back in Vegas until I'm cleared of all charges." Seth Meyers said, "I will be in Vegas, but unable to attend as I got to play my slots." The Hollywood Reporter points out they have yet to discuss Fallongate on the podcast. So far, the episodes that have been published were recorded prior to Fallongate. We'll see if they address them on upcoming shows. I'll suspect not, but you never know. Did you see this whole Martin Short thing? A guy wrote a piece on Slate.com with the headline, "Why We Keep Putting Up with Martin Short." And apparently, Hollywood did not react well to the taking down of Martin Short. The writer cited his reasons for questioning Martin Short's talents. He thinks Martin Short will desperately do anything for a laugh, and he finds almost all the over-the-top characters that he played unbelievably annoying. Are we sure this isn't me writing about Adam Sandler? Because 100%? No. Dan Kois, K-O-I-S, I hope I'm saying your name right, Dan. Anyway, Dan writes, "I find Martin Short's whole shtick exhausting, sweaty, and desperately unfunny. Throughout his evolution from sketch comedy standout to uneasy movie star to twice-failed talk show host to enthusiastic song and dance man, I've wrinkled my nose." Let me jump in here and let me give a quote about Adam Sandler. "I find Adam Sandler's whole shtick exhausting, sweaty, and desperately unfunny throughout his evolution from sketch comedy standout to movie star. I've wrinkled my nose." Okay, back to what Dan wrote about Martin Short. Eugene Levy did not like it and wrote, "Just got wind of that ridiculously laughable op-ed about Marty Short. After 50 years in the world of comedy, there's one thing I know for certain. No one is faster, smarter, or funnier than Marty Short. He is the definition of funny." Ben Stiller wrote, "Martin Short is a comedic genius. End o' story." Mark Hamill, you know him as Luke Skywalker from Star Wars. He said, "Hard to believe people are actually debating whether or not Martin Short is funny. Newsflash, he is hilarious," all caps. John Cusack, "I don't know what people are on about Martin Short, but his Mr. Rogers boxing match is my fave." And in the end, Dan wrote that Martin Short is basically a nice, decent guy who would find haters like him boring as a dinner companion. Kara Swisher has Conan O'Brien on her podcast. I haven't listened to it yet, but I did read the transcript, and I'm actually going to grab that pod right now. I got my phone right here. Here it is. It's called Conan O'Brien Talks to His Accountant. 59 minutes. Downloaded. Done. I have shared the transcript if you want to read along. That's what I did in the Facebook group, which is Daily Comedy News Podcast Group. But there's a lot to unpack there. I'll be picking at it for like the next 5 days. I don't want to just sit here and read an article to you for an hour. Conan self-described and said, "I could probably come across to a lot of people as, oh, he's so silly and he makes a lot of jokes and he takes things very lightly." And I've never been that person. I take things very seriously, and I am that person. But also, when I'm given an assignment, I take it very seriously, and it's in my nature. I don't want to let people down. I think for years and years and years, I'd wake up, and I was so driven by, what's the show today? How's it going? How did we do this week? What does the network think? How are things? Are we repeating ourselves too much? What's the next challenge? And I felt that way I started in 93, and I think that was my MO for 20-some-odd years, and I started to get better in the latter part of the TBS show, but now that's my life. I feel you, Conan. One of the first things I do every day is I check the podcast download numbers on this thing. Conan continued, "I think it was eventually toward the end, we went to half an hour, and I remembered feeling a huge difference. Half an hour and an hour? It's more than just a 30-minute difference. I don't know how to explain it, but you feel this responsibility the whole time for a longer period of time. So I don't know. I feel that just helped. And you have to remember, toward the end of my run, COVID hit, and I think COVID accelerated things a bit because I was doing interviews, late-night interviews on Zoom, and I remember just feeling like, yeah, I know COVID's going to depart and things are going to go back to normal, but I think to a degree, COVID may have accelerated it a bit, meaning I might have done 30 years instead of 28, but then I thought, why stick around for 2 years? Leave now. It's been fun. It's been an amazing gift." Conan said he loves his podcast. "I love the travel shows. Let's do this transition now. Let's not wait around to have some cool 3-0 anniversary, especially as you say, the culture's changing so quickly." Comedian Owen Benjamin has been making fun of his own sketches in light of Fallongate. Owen Benjamin tweeted, "This aged well." What he was referring to is a 2019 sketch that he had previously posted. In it, Benjamin donned a wig and a suit to play Jimmy Fallon. In the sketch, Jimmy Fallon is interviewing Joseph Stalin, played by conservative commentator Steven Crowder. There's an opening monologue where Benjamin as Fallon claims he read Stalin's autobiography in a bubble bath with Justin Timberlake. Crowder appears in a Stalin tunic and a fake mustache. He sits down with fake Jimmy Fallon. The audience goes wild. Crowder, playing Stalin, becomes angry and yells, "Who was the last one to clap?" and then tells Benjamin as Fallon, "I don't know why you have so many nice things when you have such weak hands." They banter for a bit. Crowder as Stalin tells Benjamin's Fallon when he returns home he will find his wife and children dead. And then Jimmy Fallon goes, "When we come back, Harry Styles and I'll be doing stuff to each other on a Ferris wheel, and we'll play beer pong with Kim Jong-un." Here's a weird one for you, and I'm sharing it because Chris Rock appears in the story. From The Hollywood Reporter, the federal government's crypto crackdown is hitting Hollywood again, this time targeting an animated Web3 series featuring the voices of Chris Rock, Ashton Kutcher, Mila Kunis, Jane Fonda, Seth MacFarlane, and more. The SEC on Wednesday filed charges against the creators of the NFT cartoon series Stoner Cats for an unregistered offering of NFTs. I don't believe Chris Rock is involved in this at all, other than he was one of the voices. Stoner Cats launched in 2021 as an animated series funded by selling NFTs to buyers. The series is about the wacky adventures of cats who learn to talk after inhaling medical marijuana. As I'm talking to you, I'm getting texts. My daughter apparently wants me to get Olivia Rodrigo tickets. Okay. I rolled a 7 on the Taylor Swift tickets, so she must think I'm really good at Ticketmaster. I digress. The NFT offering, which raised more than $8 million, gave buyers access to watch the series, their own Stone Cat avatar, and promised the creation of future animated projects. Did I erase this from my brain? I was doing the podcast then. Anyway, a rough week for Kunis and Kutcher. They also have been getting backlash to letters they wrote to the court in support of former That 70s Show cast member Danny Masterson ahead of his recent sentencing. Let's not go there. Pete Davidson spoke about his ketamine use at the show on Sunday at the Hard Rock in Atlantic City. That's the show he's doing with Mulaney and Jon Stewart. I told you could have got in for $15. Pete Davidson said, "I am fresh out of rehab, everybody. I got that post-rehab glow, 7th time's the charm." During his set, Pete revealed he took ketamine every day over a 4-year period before checking into rehab in June. Pete joked, "It was magical. One time I got the wiggles to mesh with Schindler's List." He revealed that he was high when attending Aretha Franklin's funeral in 2018. Why would Pete Davidson be at Aretha Franklin's funeral? A quick Google reveals to me, it was in 2018, and at that time, Pete Davidson was engaged to Ariana Grande, who was asked to perform at the service. That makes sense. Forgot that happened. The Huffington Post, in the same article I'm looking at, says, in case you forgot, which I did, Pete Davidson has a leg tattoo of Hillary Clinton, who he called one of the strangest people in the universe. Pete shared the photo on social media, and the Hillary account wrote back, "Thanks, Pete Davidson." That makes it significantly less awkward that I've had a Pete Davidson tattoo for years. Boy, I didn't know we were going to go anywhere near this. I was just trying to tell you about Pete Davidson's routine on Sunday night. That was a fun digression. Pete explained to the crowd, "You can't do drugs in your 30s because it's not cute anymore. At that point, you're just a drug addict." This next story is not new, but I hadn't seen it before, and it came up because this week was the anniversary of 9/11. Apparently, Jimy Carr had tested a joke before making it about Pete Davidson's father. Back in 2016, Jimy Carr was on a Comedy Central roast. One of the panelists was Pete Davidson. Jimy Carr's joke, "I'm appalled that people would come here and make jokes about the sacrifice Pete's heroic father made on 9/11. This is not the roast of Pete Davidson's father. That was in 2001. Last year on the Have a Word podcast, Jimy Carr explained that he first debuted the joke at the Hollywood Improv in L.A. He revealed the line got a laugh and then an ooh, and that Pete Davidson was laughing harder than everyone else from the back of the audience. Carr said, "There's a laugh from the back of the room, like a sustained maniacal laugh." It was Pete Davidson. Okay. The Daily Beast saw Michelle Wolf's new special. I haven't seen it yet. You see, last night was trivia. Tonight's football. Friday, I'm going to play Starfield. Are you playing Starfield? Yes. Maybe Saturday? Actually, maybe tomorrow. Usually on Friday night, I'm tired, and I say I'm going to play video games, and then I just, stare at the TV. So I also have to watch Shane Gillis. My son said Shane Gillis is really good. And then Sunday's football and Monday's football. By the way, Jets... Sorry, bro. Michelle Wolf has a new special. The Daily Beast reviewed it. Laura Bradley is the reviewer, and I read her review, and I'm not so sure she liked it. She wrote, much of Wolf's material poignantly points out the hypocrisy white women enact in a society that can often encourage their sense of victimhood, lest they discover and embrace their true power, as she labels it, Karening. Quoting Wolf in Spoilers, waiting until a couple summers ago to realize that things have been bad for black people is like needing to see that documentary to know SeaWorld is bad. Did you know whales shouldn't live in the sink? Laura Bradley continues, but on other topics like Me Too, the comedian's comments start to feel less considered and more incendiary. During one joke, spoilers, she sums up Me Too supporters' position by saying, "Doesn't matter what you did. You could have raped somebody or accidentally whispered into a boob. It's all the same and you have to die." Michelle Wolf says she was so frustrated by Me Too because I think we genuinely could have made social change. We could have made things better for women and men, but we effed it up from the very beginning. Michelle, spoilers, also jokes about trans people, quoting Michelle here. "I heard about all these trans women getting murdered and assaulted, and all I could think of when I heard that was, welcome, jump on in, the water's terrible and full of missing women." The audience laughs, lets out a few O's, and Michelle says, "Some people will say, no, statistically, more trans women are getting murdered." And I'm like, well, are they getting murdered because they're trans, or are they getting murdered because they're not used to presenting as women? She tells an imaginary trans woman, "You used to be a lion, now you're a gazelle. There's different rules, okay?" Laura Bradley said, Wolf obviously did not set out to write a thesis paper, but still this treatment feels frustratingly glib. Sean McCarthy writes for Decider. Cross paths with Sean quite a few times over the past 20 years. He definitely knows comedy. And he said, "What comedy specials will Michelle Wolf remind you of?" By format, nothing per se. By subject matter, Wolf stands somewhere on the spectrum between the sexually explicit feminism of Nikki Glaser and the defiance of Dave Chappelle. Sean McCarthy for Decider says, "Stream it," precisely because Wolf chose to split up her new material into multiple episodes. You're much more likely to want to watch the first 20 minutes so you can decide for yourself whether you want more where that came from. Holy cow, I just checked the clock. Running long here. I'm going to talk about the commercials at the end of today's podcast, by the way. The writer's strike is getting serious now. From the Hollywood Reporter, NBC Universal's studio group has suspended Lorne Michaels' Broadway video and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's $7 deals. Wow. Those are two pretty high-profile people. I've been sharing my Jimmy Fallon NBC conspiracy theory with people, and people are buying into it. If you missed it, check out Saturday's episode. That was all about Fallon. Short version. I wonder if that story leaked, if they're trying to push Jimmy out before a political year. And I'm mentioning that right now because normally I would think Lorne Michaels would try and protect Jimmy Fallon, but Lorne's heading for SNL's 50th year. And NBC apparently isn't afraid to mess with Lorne right now. So very, very interesting. Derek Brown has a debut comedy/poetry album out today. It's called A Close Shave with Heaven. Let's listen.
There's a strange thing that happens when you're in a relationship and when you're deep in it for like 4 years. You don't know why this seismic shift happens in a relationship where you go from like, let's have fun, let's go play dodgeball, into like, let's argue all the time. And you can't get back to that fun. And therapy can try and do it, and sometimes you can't do it. But I want to examine more that strange thing where you argue all the time. The only sex you're having is makeup sex, where your girlfriend puts on a bunch of makeup and then goes have sex with a bunch of other dudes.
The album was recorded live in Boston. Intro by Eugene Merman, who's a big fan, and signed Derek to his PGF Records comedy label. That label includes Bobcat Goldthwait, love what he's doing these days, and Maeve Higgins. A Close Shave with Heaven, available streaming digitally. It's on vinyl and, quote, the Total Brownie Jam Pack, which includes A Close Shave with Heaven on vinyl, a 2-egg carrying case, a stealthy shaving cream canister with secret advice inside, and a book of poems. That's fun. Over on Gossip Corner, Matt Rife was in Vegas. He did 2 shows at the Cosmopolitan last Friday. Then he showed up at the Jonas Brothers show. The Jonases were doing their residency at the MGM Grand, and that show included a special intermission from Matt Rife. Meanwhile, Olivia Wilde seen hugging comedian Nick Thune during a night out at the Greek Theater. This from ET Online. Olivia Wilde was out to see Nate Bargatze. She was greeted by Nick Thune. Nick Thune reportedly stepped out from a backstage area to greet Wilde, and the two shared an embrace before entering the venue. Wow. James Adomian is taping his special today at the Elysian in L.A. Love James Adomian, one of my favorite albums from the recent years. I didn't phrase that well. You know what I meant. Trump versus Bernie debate, fantastic album. The official release says, on the stage, James Adomian is a living god, an incarnation of Dionysus, meaning he's often drunk and largely available for bookings. He's been to Armenia twice, but still can't convince anyone that he is Armenian. Chad Daniels is on tour. he's starting to really heat up. I think that's a name we'll be talking about more and more in the next year or so. The tour kicks off in Denver tonight at the Comedy Works South. 3 days. Then on to Charlotte, Raleigh, Atlanta, Chicago, Salt Lake, LA, Irvine, San Antonio, Arlington, Portland, wrapping up December 15th and 16th in Tacoma. Gianmarco Cerese, you've heard me talk about him, one of my faves. Let's keep an eye on him. He just started a tour. Tonight is not the first night, but his tour is called the Leaning In Tour. Tonight in Bloomington, Minnesota, then to Northford, Connecticut. I haven't heard of Northford, and I'm from New York City. Poughkeepsie, LA, Liberty Township, Ohio. Dubuque, Scottsdale, Chicago, Milwaukee, Milan. I was like, what's IT? Italy. That's what IT is. Milan. You know, that Milan, the famous one. I was like, what state is IT? No, it's Milan. It's Milan. Then he's in London, UK, Berlin, Amsterdam, Paris. If you're in Paris on November 9th, Apollo Theater, go see Gianmarco. Or if you don't want to pay the airfare, just go to Bridgeport, Connecticut, November 16th. Then DC, Point Pleasant Beach, Pittsburgh, Springville, Utah, Memphis, Janesville, and then December 28th through the 30th in Philadelphia. That's a pretty big tour there, pal. That concludes the comedy segment of today's podcast. I'm going to talk about the commercial load because I've gotten a bunch of comments and I just want to address it. So if you don't want to hear any of that, we're done. See you tomorrow. For those of you still here, Isaac posted a review. Before I even comment, Isaac, dude, thank you so much for listening every day. I've been doing radio in some form for 30 years now, and I know you wouldn't post something if you didn't actually care. It's the easiest thing in the world to go delete. It's the easiest thing to just like ignore. But that you actually took the moment to post this lets me know you actually do like the show and you actually care. So, and I've gotten a couple other comments about the ads. Well, let me start with Isaac and then I'll explain. So Isaac posted the headline, "So many ads has become overloaded with repetitive ad reads. I had to change my 5-star to a 1-star. Seems like it's become 50% ad reads and they are so repetitive. Used to be great to listen when it was 1 minute of ads and 10 minutes of content, but it's hard to listen to now." Isaac, totally fair comment. So let me explain how we get here. Cards up. I'm totally trying to make money on this thing. 100%, dude. 100%. Not going to pretend I'm not. So there's two kinds of commercials. There are live reads, which is me talking about a product, like this week talking about DraftKings. And there are the commercials you may get a lot for online casinos. I got one this morning for a famous credit card company. All right, so there's the commercials and there's the live reads, we'll call them. Last week, there were 2 live reads. That not really supposed to happen. You're supposed to have one. The 2 advertisers were Factor and DraftKings. DraftKings did a significant commitment to the show. I think it's 9 weeks in total. So thank you, DraftKings. And I want to be good to DraftKings. Factor, as a new sponsor, I want them to stay in. I like that category. I truly do like the food. This is not a commercial. This is me just telling you what's going on. What you heard was me truly enthusiastically promoting the product. Did I go long? Yeah. In retrospect, did I go too long? Yeah. You guys made that clear. So when you put the enthusiasm for Factor back to back with a DraftKings read that comes along with a lot of boilerplate legal stuff that you have to do, yeah, that middle break got a little long there. You're right. The feedback I'm getting this week is it's a little better. The other part of this is when you do a podcast, the podcasts have to live somewhere. That's called hosting. You can either pay for hosting or you can get hosting free. I work with a hosting service that as part of the deal, they sell the commercials, the ones you hear. And I have to run at least one before the show. I have to run at least one after the show. In the past, I had 2 and 2 because I never had any live reads. Live reads pay a lot better than the other kind of commercial. Again, following your feedback, I'm like, oh, all right, gotcha, everybody. So I had 2 and 2. I've cut it down to 1 and 1. So what you should hear now is a commercial at the beginning, then me. I try and do all the other stuff, including the housekeeping in the middle of the show. If you want to skip it, skip it. I get it. I do the same thing. And then one more at the end. So that should be the format. I'm not being defensive. I'm just trying to explain. I hope that all makes sense to you. Another thing, just as I'm talking, as I think, so when you upload the file, you have to put a marker and tell it how many commercials. If you go backwards in time, I have them marked for 2 and 2 and things like that. I would have to go back and change 1,500 episodes. That takes more than 5 minutes. So, maybe if you go back and you're like, hey, I wonder what John talked about back in February, you'll get 2 and 2. If you listen tomorrow, you should get 1 and 1 and whatever pops up in the middle. Next week, I don't think there are any live reads, so you'll just hear commercials. I hope that all makes sense. Oh, the other thing, too, is I immediately got the feedback on Labor Day. People were like, dude, what the hell? So last week, after I got that feedback, I went back in and I redid Tuesday's episode to make it longer. So I did try to make the episodes longer last week, so it wasn't like 50% commercials. But Isaac, man, I hope you're still out there. Email me on the side. We'd just love to connect you. We don't have to do anything public. john@thesharkdeck.com. My email's in the notes. Would love to hear from you. I hope you're still out there. All right. And that is your comedy news for today. Follow the show for free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. Thanks to DraftKings for supporting today's show. See you tomorrow.